Good morning, students. Hope you are well at home and following all the rules of this lockdown. Students, it's a tough time as the pandemic COVID-19 has enwrapped the entire world in its clutches. It's a tough time for even students too, as they are not able to continue their studies in the same regular manner as they used to do. So I thought I must interact with you through this video. My today's video relates to the first chapter of English book Hornbill for class 11. And the chapter's name is The Portrait of a Lady by Chapati Singh. Chapati Singh, a well-known veteran author, born in February 1915 and passed away in March 2014. Train to Pakistan is a well-known work by him, on which a movie has also been made. In the chapter The Portrait of a Lady, Chapati Singh has given an account of his grandmother. He draws a lifelike portrait of her. She was very old, her face was wrinkled, her hair white, and it was hard for the author to believe that once she had been young and pretty. It was hard for the author because since last 20 years, as the author's age was around 20 years, and since last 20 years, he has been seeing his grandmother like that only. His grandfather's picture hung above the mantelpiece in the drawing room. Mantelpiece is a shelf just above the fireplace. It's a wooden shelf. And in the picture he wore a big turban, his clothes were loose. He looked at least 100 years old. And again it was hard for the author to believe that he had once a wife or children. Means the grandfather looked so old in the photograph. Chapati Singh's grandmother was a short lady. She was fat and slightly bent, stooping. She couldn't walk straight. She hobbled about the house. Hobbled means she walked with great difficulty as she was bent, stooping. She had to keep one hand on her waist. It was to balance her stoop. And the other hand, she held a rosary. Rosary means a string of beads which the worshippers or devotees used to pray to God. And she was always telling the beads. Her lips constantly moved in prayer. The first sign that she was a religious lady. She put on white clothes, as maybe because of she was a widow. Her silver locks looks scattered over her pale face. Silver locks again signify that she was old, and the white hair referred to here as silver locks. She looked like snowy mountains in winter. Again, the white hair. She was a picture of peace and contentment. Contentment means satisfaction, as the grandmother has lived a long life, and at that stage she was quite satisfied with her life. That's why she was a picture of peace and contentment. She was very old. Perhaps she could not have looked older. Means she was so old that it was difficult for the author to believe that she could be more old than that. She looked the same for the last 20 years. Since the last 20 years, she was just same. Chapati Singh and her grandmother were good friends. Means they shared a very nice relationship with each other. The parents of Chapati Singh went to city and they left Chapati with his grandmother in village. And she took good care of Chapati Singh. She used to wake him up in the morning. She got him ready for the school. She said her morning prayer in sing-song manner. Means she used to say her morning prayer loudly so that the author should learn it by heart. But on the other hand, author had a different interpretation. He liked the voice of grandmother but never bothered to learn it. Then she would fetch his wooden slate. She had already washed it and plastered with yellow chalk. She would take an earthen ink pot and a reed pen. Children, we are the blessed ones that we are using book, copy, pencil, pen, and other stationery items to study. But earlier, the students were not so privileged or blessed ones. They had a wooden plate-like structure known as slate on which they used to write, and that slate had to be washed and plastered daily. We used pen, but they used a reed pen, means a pen made up of bamboo stick. Then the grandmother would tie the bundle and hand it to the author, means the bundle of books and other stationery items. She would give him a thick stale chapati with little butter and sugar spread on it. Then she would give the author chapati. Stale means not fresh chapati, with butter spread on it. It was a breakfast for the author. She carried the stale chapatis for the village dogs also. Second sign that she was a religious lady and a human lady. His grandmother always went to school with him. The school was attached to the temple, means next to the courtyard of temple there was the school. The priest taught children the alphabet and the morning prayer. So the priest was there who was the teacher. The children sat in two rows in the veranda. They would sing the alphabet or the prayer in a chorus. Till that time, the grandmother sat inside the temple. She would read holy books. Then, when the school was over, the grandmother and the grandson used to walk home together. The village dogs would gather at the temple door. They both threw chapatis to them. The dogs would growl and fight with each other for the chapatis. The narrator's parents sent for both of them in the city. Means the narrator's parent called grandmother and Khushwant Singh to the city. And they went there, and actually it was a turning point in the friendship of Khushwant Singh and grandmother. They shared the same room, but grandmother no longer went to school with him. The narrator used to go to an English school in a motor bus. There were no dogs in the streets, so grandmother took to feeding the sparrows, as the grandmother used to feed the dogs in the city, but as she was not able to do that in the city, so she used to feed the sparrows. Years rolled by. They saw less of each other. These years passed by, and now the author and the grandmother interacted very less. Sometimes he would ask the author what the teacher had taught him. She did not believe in the things they taught at the English school. She was unhappy. She did not like English or science. She felt sad that there was no teaching about the God and the scriptures at school. Means the grandmother wanted that her grandson should study about God and scriptures also. But as there was no teaching about God and scriptures at English schools, so she was unhappy. One day when the narrator told her that they were being given music lessons, she got disturbed. She thought that music is quite indecent. For her, music was not for gentlefolks, it was for beggars. Then the narrator went to university. He was given a room of his own, and the common link of friendship was snapped. Snapped means broken. The grandmother accepted her loneliness quietly. She was always busy with her spinning wheel and reciting prayers. She rarely talked to anyone. In the afternoon, she relaxed for a while. Then she would feed sparrows. She sat in the veranda. She broke the bread into crumbs or little bits. Then she would throw them to sparrows. Hundreds of sparrows came there, and they created a hell of noise. It means sparrows chirped a lot, and it was very noisy when she used to give the sparrows something to eat. Some came and sat on her legs, others would sit on her shoulders. Some would sit even on her head, but she smiled and never frightened or scared them away. And children, feeding the sparrows was the happiest half hour of the day for her. Sometimes this question is asked in the exams that what was the happiest half hour for the grandmother. So you would write that feeding the sparrows was the happiest half hour of the day for grandmother. Then the narrator decided to go abroad for higher studies. He was to remain away for 5 years. The grandmother was very old. She could die any moment. The narrator was worried. But the grandmother was not upset. She showed no emotion. She came to the railway station to see him off. Her lips moved in prayer. Her mind was lost in prayer. Her fingers were busy telling the beads of a rosary. She kissed his forehead silently. The narrator thought that it was the last sign of physical contact between them. As the grandmother now has got very, very old, and author was leaving for higher studies. So the author or the Khuswan Singh thought that maybe that was the last sign of physical contact between grandmother and the author. And then he thought that he would not be able to see his grandmother again. And now you can check the strength of grandmother. Being so old, she came to the railway station to bid goodbye to the author. It shows the strength and courage of grandmother. The narrator returned home after 5 years. His grandmother met him at the station. She did not look a day older. She did not speak anything. She held him in her arms. She went on reciting her prayers. In the afternoon, she fed the sparrows as usual. In the evening, a change came over her. She didn't pray. A very unusual change. Never in her life she forgot to pray. But that day, she didn't pray. She collected the women of the neighborhood. She got an old drum. Actually, the word which has been used here is dilapidated drum. Dilapidated means broken, torn drum. And she continued thumping the old drum for several hours. She started singing. She sang of the homecoming of warriors. They had to persuade her to stop. She might overstrain herself. It was for the first time that she had forgotten to pray. The next morning she fell ill. She had a mild fever. She told them that her end was near. She realized that she had forgotten to pray. She didn't want to talk. It would be waste of time. She ignored their requests. She lay peacefully in bed. She was praying and telling beads. Then her lips stopped moving. The rosary fell down from her lifeless fingers. Her face looked pale, but peaceful. She was dead. She was laid on the ground. She was covered with a red shawl. Arrangements for a funeral were being made. It was evening. The sun was setting. They brought a wooden stretcher. They stopped halfway in the courtyard. See, something unusual is going to happen over here. Thousands of sparrows sat near her dead body. They did not cheer up as they used to do earlier when they created a hell of noise. Everyone felt sorry for the birds. The narrator's mother brought some bread. She broke it into little crumbs. She threw these crumbs to the sparrows, but the birds took no notice of them. Then they carried her dead body outside. The sparrows flew away quietly. The crumbs of bread still remained lying there in the courtyard. Evidently or clearly, the sparrows had come to mourn the death of the grandmother. Means they paid their tribute to the lady who used to care for them whole life. That's all, children. Hope you would get benefited with it. And for any queries, please contact me from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. in my number. At last, I would like to say, actually, if I can stay at home, why not you? Thank you.